Hello to all my sports card collector and investor friends. I hope everybody is doing well today. Just wanted to make a quick video. I was just, had a thought and I wanted to, just kind of go over some things and see what you felt about it too. This is more of kind of open discussion, but one thing that I've noticed over the last year as I've been collecting and investing is I hear a lot of people talking about how they equate a PSA 9 card almost to the same level as a raw card when they are making a purchase. And now, and we're talking about modern cards, not vintage cards. So let me go ahead and just make that distinction. With modern cards, and I do understand. I mean, if it's a card that's a year or two old, you could kind of look at it and say like, well, it's more than likely going to come back either a 9 or a 10. So I do understand the thinking behind that. I get it completely. But we're living in a world where, we've got such long wait times at the grading companies, whether that be PSA or BGS. And I think even SGC as time goes on, I think right now they've got a fairly quick turnaround time. I think that'll change. And so it's an interesting debate because for me, and as I'm looking and I'm doing research, there's just such huge discounts when you're looking at PSA 9 cards. And I understand, obviously, we all want a PSA 10. Resale value is going to be highest at PSA 10 than it is right now, anyway, over a PSA 9 or a BGS 9.5. But as I'm looking and making comparisons just on, and this is across the board, this isn't on any one particular player or on any one particular set, but there is a ton of value in that PSA 9, and then also the BGS 9.5. That's another thing. I mean, everyone kind of just looks at PSA 10 as kind of the king of the castle, or the queen of the castle. I mean, look, and we've talked about this in other videos, in the early 2000s, people were popping PSA 10 cases to resubmit to BGS because BGS at the time was considered to be the premier grading company. So don't assume that what is going on right now is going to last forever. I mean, heck, in 5-10 years, there might be completely different grading companies. I mean, or there might be, some sort of technological advance that changes the entire landscape of the industry. So, not that I anticipate PSA and BGS being out of the game, but my point is that just because something is hot right now, just because something is number one right now, doesn't mean that it's going to stay that way forever. And so I think that, and even if you're just a short-term flipper, you still have to keep this in the back of your mind because there's going to be buys that you make where you're thinking, okay, I'm going to flip this in the next 3 to 6 months, and it doesn't work out the way that you thought it would, and then you're going to be holding it, and so maybe it then turns into a 12-month hold or a 2-year hold or heck, a 5-year hold. It just depends. So, I think that, for me, I'm definitely going to kind of take a harder look at, BGS 9.5 and PSA 10s and just look at where that discount lies with certain cards, especially with a lot of these popular cards where, that PSA 10 is just out of reach. I mean, there's certain cards where I don't even bother looking at the auction because I know that if it's in a PSA 10, it's out of my price range. So, but then of course, the question comes in, what sort of discount are you getting at that PSA 9? What does that look like? Is it 15%, 20% of what a PSA 10 goes for? Because to me, that could be good value depending on the player, depending on the set, etc. I mean, I'm looking at a lot of cards and I'm kind of rethinking things to where it's like, man, should I, buy a few PSA 10s or should I buy a lot of PSA 9s? Because if we're talking about vintage cards, if you're looking at your vintage cards, I know for all you vintage card collectors, you sure as heck would be happy if you had some PSA 9s. Because for me, I've got older cards that are PSA 3s and PSA 5s, and those PSA 9s are looking pretty good right now. So, not to say that, that's kind of thinking across the board, but, I was just thinking, and not everyone's holding long term. I think there are a lot of, for me, I can hold some things long term, but if I can sell them quickly, then there's opportunities there, then that's great to kind of have options. But I was just thinking, let's not sleep on PSA 9s, because I think that even, especially with more and more demand coming in, assuming that it keeps on the way that it is, PSA 10 gets priced out pretty quickly, and then we're left with PSA 9 in that card, and there's some good value there, and those have risen. A lot of those PSA 9s. In particular, I'm thinking about Luka Doncic's 2018 regular Prism, base Prism. I had a PSA 9 that I bought in September of last year. I bought it for like $28, a PSA 9. And I thought that I sold it in, I think, November for $110, $105. I'm thinking, my gosh, I've just, tripled my money, quadrupled my money, after fees and everything. But I think those now are going for $200 or whatever they're going for. I haven't looked at it in a while, but my point is that 9s have the ability to go up as well. It just depends, of course, on the players and the sets and everything else. And so, for all of us on a budget, me included, I think, we can't just skip over the 9s and just kind of hold out for 10s. And then, of course, with BGS 9.5, what happens if something happens with PSA? What if PSA's rep goes away and BGS becomes the new number one, or SGC becomes a new number one? The point is that, if we're just putting such a huge, multiplier on a PSA 10, that might be kind of short-sighted if we're just looking at today's pricing and the buying activity for today's buyers. Because today's buyers are not necessarily going to be tomorrow's buyers, and today's companies might not be tomorrow's companies. So that was just my thought. I wanted to share with you guys. I want to hear from you all too. Who's going after PSA 9s or BGS 9.5? I'd like to hear too of people that just aren't even bothering with PSA and just going directly with only BGS cards or only SGC. I'd be curious in hearing from you all, and just kind of hearing a little bit more about your strategy, because I think it's a good discussion. As we are moving through this sports card investing world, this wild time where, this wild west of a time. So I'm interested in hearing more from you. Please subscribe and stay tuned for more videos. Thanks a lot, guys.